Welcome to the Duchy. It's time for another episode of the Dukes of Dice podcast, a proud member of the Dice Tower Network.
Coming to you from the Duchy in the Duke City, Albuquerque, New Mexico, and the Emerald City, Seattle. It's the Dukes of Dice, a podcast about board, card, and probably not role-playing games. Today, Alex is still out on Duke-ternity leave, so Sean gets some help from me, Suzanne Sheldon, from the Dice Tower podcast. We're going to be reviewing Pandasaurus Games' The Loop. Then we take a look back at the Duke's review of Tang Garden in our Duke's Double Take. And now, the Dukes of Dice.
Hey there, everybody. Welcome back to the podcast. This is Sean, and as you heard, we also have...
Suzanne!
Oh, I just robbed you of the and.
You did. That's okay.
I made it... Oh, you couldn't say the and. I'm a terrible, terrible host.
You can tell it's been a little while since we recorded together, Sean. We're not quite in our normal rhythm yet. We'll get there. We'll hit our stride.
That's true. At some point, I'm gonna look back. When's the last time? I mean, I had you on when Alex was on his walkabout.
Right.
But that was a while.
That was a while ago. Yeah.
It's been a while. It's certainly been a while.
Pre my wife Abby, right?
Yes, indeed. Wow. All right. Well, you are joining us for episode 263, which we're calling Me, Myself, and Pie. That name suggestion from Blaine Miley over in our Board Game Geek Guild. We're talking about a couple things today. We're talking about The Loop as our featured review, which has clones. So there's the Me, Myself, and I. Nothing with Tang Garden, which is our Duke's Double Take, but then Pie. Suze, my understanding is that you are a pie aficionado. Aficionado? Is it aficionado or aficionado? Which is preferred?
I feel like your educational level is higher than mine, so you should know this. I'm embarrassed for you right now, Sean. Jeez Louise.
You are a pie enthusiast.
Amen to that. No argument here. And really, well done, Blaine. I really appreciate that naming right there. And it's a little bit of wordplay without like a straight out pun, which I extra appreciate. Well, I would not call that a pun, but I don't know. Somebody will probably argue with me. You can tell I didn't write the intro because of the Duke-ternity leave. I would never write that. I would never write that, Sean. But you know, I'm in your studio, so I will play your game.
I think it's all like, so Community has been like my go-to like falling asleep show now.
Yep.
Like I've seen like every episode of Community, like, I don't know, 30 times.
Sure.
And so with all of the Cheng puns and all of the Dean puns, like I just got to get Duke in there as much as possible.
Fair enough.
So.
But it's excellent to be back with you. Thanks so much for having me back on.
No, thank you. So,
yeah.
Is there something you need to say though? I feel like this is a bad setup, but it's great to have you here.
Yeah. I noticed though, Sean, a few episodes ago when you had this, during recording realization with Alex, I haven't planned for what's going to happen during the paternity leave period. And within a split second, you said, I'll ask Aaron from Boards Alive. Not, I will have Duke Suzanne back. No. Your brain went to Aaron before me. The wounds, Sean, the hurt.
Let me just say this. Aaron has 2 podcasts. You only have 1 podcast right now, right?
Fair.
So it's a number of podcasts that really is that issue. No. So in my defense, So Alex and I talked about it, and we definitely planned to have you, we planned for me to have you both on. And Alex was like, hey, have you talked to them? And I kept putting it off. This is like months ago. And anyway, Aaron reached out to me and said, hey, do you need any help now that Alex is gone on Duke-ternity leave? Not paternity leave, Duke-ternity leave, Suzanne. And so I was like, oh yeah, okay, perfect. And then I invited you.
Your second choice. Got it.
Not my second choice. You were second in chronology. And here's the thing too. So you're Duke Suze. I don't know that we've ever conferred dukedom on Aaron.
Well, I mean, to be fair, I think I was going to give you a little bit of slack because listening to the episode, I think you guys said it was really only his second time joining you. And I've been on a few more times than that. So I was going to be, okay, I'll let Aaron have this one.
I want to say this is your fifth.
I've lost count, buddy.
I think it's your fifth. Yeah, I think it's your fifth.
Yeah.
We'll go with fifth. Fifth is a good number. So, Suze, what is new with you?
Ugh, I mean, a lot, right? So anybody who listens to my podcast, The Dice Tower, of which I'm one of the 4 co-hosts, they'll know that I also work behind the scenes with a publisher called Restoration Games, who has produced games like Fireball Island and Stop Thief and Return to Dark Tower. And we are now in the midst of planning our relaunch of the Thunder Road Vendetta campaign. And I'm saying this not as a marketing thing. I'm saying this as a disclosure for transparency, but also just like, you've asked me what I've been up to. That's what I've been up to. Oh my gosh, it's so busy, right? Holy heck. It's really, really busy. And it's an interesting time in the industry right now with kind of all the things that you can read in the news articles about freight and supply chain and things like that. And just like every other board game publisher out there right now, that's impacting Restoration Games as well. So we're working through all of that with our wonderful partners, both on, in the States and overseas and things like that to work through those. But it's been pretty busy. Good, but busy.
Well, that's good. Can I tell you something very exciting? In the last couple weeks or so, Chewy, my youngest daughter, has really been stepping up her gaming. So she's a hardcore video gamer, but in terms of board gaming, she has wanted to take the leap into like adult games. Not the little kid games that she's been playing forever. So like we've played Dominion recently, which was really cool. She did really well with that, her first time. But we played Unmatched Buffy the Vampire Slayer.
Oh.
And she did awesome. So she loves Buffy. I don't know that's a good thing that I let my 7-year-old daughter watch Buffy. But she loves Buffy. And she played as Buffy and Giles. She didn't want to be Buffy and Xander. She plays Buffy and Giles. And then I, of course, was Spike and Drusilla. And she beat me. It was fun. Like she didn't have any like strategy. Like it was very much just like, I'm just going to play the cards I have in my hand. And that's fine. That's a fine first start. But it was super cool. Like it was super cool to watch her, like to know that she was understanding things, it was super cool. So she really liked Unmatched a lot. Both my daughters, in fact, like Unmatched a lot. So.
Well, that's amazing to hear. And that makes me super duper happy. And I always get I do get a little touchy about talking about Restoration Games because I want to, I think it's just really, really important to be transparent and open and operate as ethically as I can. But thank you for sharing that story. That makes me really, really happy. And I mean, again, I'm fully biased, so nobody has to believe anything I say here. But one of the things I love about Unmatched is that it can operate on those levels where as long as you can read and grasp the basic mechanisms of the card play, very young kids can play it and have fun and, be competitive.
Yeah.
But, at the tournament level with Unmatched, it gets so intense, right? And there's all these mind games with anticipating what cards, and they know exactly how many copies you have left in your deck and all that. Like, it's really cool that you can play it on a fairly straightforward level, but then also a very advanced level. And it's a super cool thing about the game, in my personal opinion, that's completely biased. So there you go. So thanks for sharing that.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a super exciting time. I feel like this is what I've been waiting for. I've been waiting for her to kind of come into her own in terms of board gaming. And I'm trying to be very careful not to get super, super pushy. What we also were doing, we started playing Pokemon, I think I had talked about.
Yep.
And there's this shop that just opened up down from my house, like literally like 4 blocks from my house. And they do this like kids Pokemon thing on Sundays. So not this Sunday, but the following Sunday we're going to go. And I picked up some new starter decks for her that are a little bit more advanced. Like we just have like the super basic starter decks right now. So it's cool. I want to make sure that we're playing the stuff that she wants to play, not necessarily the stuff that I want her to play.
Nice.
If that makes sense.
You're a great dad.
I tried, dang it. So well, Suze, it is fantastic having you here. I'm so glad we have you here. And I think that the episode, because usually have you been on with Alex? Have you been on an episode when it was the three of us?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I have.
All right. I'm trying to remember, but it's usually not though. Because I think we reviewed.
It's usually when Alex is out, right? Yeah, that you fill a seat.
We reviewed the Kemet expansion, the first Kemet expansion. We reviewed Fields of Arla.
Yeah, but we've also recorded live at conventions together as a trio.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Well, I guess that counts. Sure. Well, thank you.
Podcast.
Well, no, I know, but I was just thinking in terms of like, whatever. Okay. Anyway, moving on. Suze,
Sean.
I told you a little bit about some games that I've been playing, although that wasn't technically my recent plays entries. Have you gotten any games to the table recently that you would like to tell the listeners about?
What a wonderful, smooth, not at all awkward segue. That's Dice Tower level. That's Suzanne and Mandy level quality segueing right there, buddy. Thanks for lowering yourself for my presence on the show.
I'm trying to make you comfortable.
Yeah, I ease me right in because that's about how we do it. Why, yes, Sean, I have been playing a number of games recently, and I'm looking forward to telling you about one of them now. I shall start with Scout. Scout is a ladder or shedding style card game that was actually published in Japan. It's designed by Kai Kajino, and it's published by One More Game in Japan. But apparently they licensed it out to Oink Games, which is a more well-known Japanese publisher, at least in North America, right? Oink is well-known in this area, or certainly within the hobby, for producing these very compact little box games that have a lot of gameplay in them and aesthetically are beautiful, quality-wise are beautiful, and a lot of fun, which is exciting. So I decided to get my copy of Scout back to the table because it's been a little while, and it just held up beautifully. So Scout is one of these games where you just got a bunch of cards with numbers on them. But in this case, in the corner of the card, there are two numbers. There's kind of a big one, and then there's a smaller one underneath it. And if you were to rotate the card, then the opposite is true. So if there's a 1 on top and then a little 2 underneath it, if you flip it over, there's a 2 on top and a little 1 underneath it, right? Okay, cool. So the cards are double-sided, and that has a huge impact on play. The main mechanism is ladder shedding or ladder climbing or shedding, which is very simple. So if I play a pair of 2s, Sean can play a pair of 3s and beat me, right? Cool. In Scout, then Alex could play a run of 3, 4, 5 and beat Sean's pair of 3s, that kind of thing. So you're going around the table trying to ladder up and beat the player who was before you. Now, if you do that, you actually get to collect their cards in front of you as points. That's excellent. Cool. Points are good. Now, you also have the option of scouting, which means if you cannot beat the player in front of you, instead, you can actually take one of the cards off the end of their previous play and add it to your hand. But you give that person a point for taking a card from them, for using one of their cards. So it does, there's a little bit of tension there in terms of whether or not it's worth it to you. And then you keep on going. And the round ends when a player has emptied their hand of cards, or everybody has scouted, but they can't play anymore, basically. And you play the same number of rounds as you have players, and whoever has the most points wins. Straightforward. Perfect. But wait, there's a twist. I think the scouting move is actually an interesting move anyway.
Yeah.
The twist is you have to play from your hand, and you may not reorder your cards. So you get shuffled up and they get dealt to you, and whatever order you get, that's what you got. So if you got 2 2s next to each other in your hand, you can play them as a pair of 2s. But if you have a 2 5 2, you got 1 2, 1 5, and 1 2. That's what you got. You don't have any power move there at all. So that's really interesting. So what it is you're manipulating your hand. Now, there's another game that does this. So Bonanza does this, right? Bonanza is well known for not letting you reorder the cards in your hand. And there's another game called Crass Carrier, which I believe was released in North America under the name Delt. I love Delt, or I love Crass Carrier a lot for the same reason. So it's it adds this hand manipulation because when you scout, you can put that card in your hand anywhere, right? So scouting lets you strengthen your hand in a really positive way. Oh, but wait, Sean, did you forget what I said at the beginning? The cards have two numbers on them because you know what's at the bottom of your card. Now, you cannot randomly rotate cards, but when you get dealt your hand, you assess your hand and you may that one time flip it and choose the alternate numbers that are on the cards instead, which is really, really cool. And a shockingly important decision after you get used to the game. Also, when you scout, you may rotate that card to either side before you add it anywhere in your hand. So a card's value in play on the table is rarely variable depending on who's coming after and what you need and that kind of thing. So those twists of the double numbered cards, of the not being able to move the cards around your hand and having to play what you have in your hand, and adding that hand manipulation on top of a just regular solid ladder game makes Scout something unique, something different, something a little special. And I personally really, really like it. And I'm glad Oink picked it up because it'll make it much easier for more people to get access to.
So how many players does it play well at, would you say?
I think it plays well at probably 3 or 4.
Okay. So two is not really an option.
No, I don't think you want to play this at 2.
Okay. Because Raquel really likes ladder climbing games. She likes trick-taking ladder climbing games, which are kind of linked to my mind, although they're different.
They are to me too. I don't know why. They're very different in some ways.
So I actually found that it's on the Board Game Geek game shop.
Yeah. The new Oink edition, yeah.
Yeah, I'm ordering it now because we like shedding games or ladder climbing games. So cool.
Yeah, this one's really good, and it has that beautiful set of twists in it that I think deserve to be recognized. I hope you have fun with it.
Oh no, I'm logged in as Sean Connery. Oops, I'll have to fix that.
Oh, Sean Connery, the person who comes up with all those amazing title options?
The one and only. Okay, I'll have to let me send a note to myself. I'll do that later. Cool. Well, yeah, I'm definitely interested in trying out Oink. Well, Suze,
nope.
Scout from Oink. Yes,
there you go.
Scout from Oink. I got it. Suze, this portion of the podcast apparently has been sponsored by Cool Mini or Not Games, or CMON Games, or Come On Games, or however you want to. What's the official? Is it CMON?
No, now it used to be, but now it's Come On.
Now it's Come On?
They changed it.
All right. Well, anyway.
Yeah, exactly.
We're actually not sponsored by Come On Games, but the 2 games I'm talking about happen to be from Come On Games. That I don't like that at all. So we had Extra Life a week or 2 ago. And we got a bunch of plays in, but I'll talk about 2 today. Before Extra Life, we went and we saw Eternals. Is that right? Yeah, we saw Eternals, which was a very different Marvel movie. It was very much not in like the typical Marvel cookie cutter, which I say that not in a disparaging way because I'm a huge Marvel fanboy. But it was very different and I liked it, but it's probably like mid-tier Marvel. Anyway, board games. I played Ankh, Gods of Egypt by Come On Games, designed by Eric Lang. And this was a 2021 release. Our good buddy Jeremy had backed it on Kickstarter. He brought it in, and I think this was the last game or second to last game that we played of the evening. And it was a lot of fun. So this is an Egypt-themed game. It's kind of part of the trilogy of the Norse one.
Blood Rage and Rising Sun.
Blood Rage. Yeah, Blood Rage and the Japanese Rising Sun. And so this is the Egypt-themed one. And this is an action selection sort of area control, but it's not area control in the way that you would think. Have you played the Suze?
I have not.
Okay. So it's kind of area control, but again, not area control in the way that you would think. Each one of you is this Egyptian mythological god that has some sort of unique ability. And then you have these followers that are all out on this map of Egypt. And there are these different types of buildings. There are obelisks, there are pyramids, and there are temples. And so in these, on the board, there are different regions. And when there are these conflicts, at the end of the conflict, which is this fight, and you do this whole little fight thing, which I'll describe in a second, you're checking at the end who won. And if you win, you're going to get a point. But also, it's going to check the majority of each of those three types of buildings. And whoever has the majority in each is going to get another point. So there's another potentially up 3 points up for grabs. So if Suze, you and I fight in a region and you beat me, you're going to get a point. But I control one obelisk and there's no other obelisks there. I'm going to get a point. You control two pyramids and I control one pyramid. You're going to get the points for the majority of pyramids. And then nobody controls shrines, so nobody gets anything. That's pretty interesting. I kind of like how it does it. You can all share in certain regions, like occupy the same regions at the same time without triggering a conflict, because the game has this sort of path of phases. So, and let me come back to it. It's really strange. It's very innovative. I really like how they do this. So on your turn, you're going to perform up to 2 actions. And the actions are move. The actions are add troops to the board. The third action is gain followers, which are sort of currency. And then a fourth action is, it's an upgrade action. I forget what the actual name. And the actions that I just described go from top to bottom. So in other words, if you perform the top action, you can perform any of the other 3 actions as your second action. But if you perform the bottom action first, that's your only action you can perform that round. And what's interesting is for each of these actions, there's a different track. And so if on my turn, I say, okay, I'm going to move, then I move the marker on the move track, which is a shared track for everybody. Then I move my troops. Then I say, okay, I'm gonna get followers, the currency, and I move that track. And so as we're going, these tracks are moving, and anytime that a track reaches the end, it's going to trigger sort of the next phase of the game. And so for the first, 4 or 5 phases, it lets you exercise control over certain types of buildings. But then eventually, after like the 5th or the 6th phase, it's going to be, okay, now it's conflict time. Everyone's going to battle it out all over the board. So it's pretty interesting. There's this interesting like tempo mechanic. I may not want to actually move my troops this round because I don't really need to. But if I do, it's going to trigger the next phase, which is going to give me some benefit. Or maybe I don't want the next player to get that benefit, so maybe I kind of have to. It was pretty interesting. Additionally, there is some asymmetric powers. So you all have available to you the same powers on your board divided into 3 sections. But you're only able to choose 2 of those, 2 out of 4 of the powers in each section. And then once you've chosen 2 of the 4, then you can choose of the next 4, then you can choose of the next 4. And so everyone kind of develops different powers. There's also monsters. You got to have monsters in one of these Eric Lang games.
Of course.
And so when you reach your second power, you get to choose one of the available monsters that can augment your forces. The other interesting thing is there's sort of player elimination, or there can be. If by a certain point in the game, if you haven't achieved enough points, you could be eliminated. On the other hand, you could wind up merging with another player. The 2 lowest players can merge into one faction, and they kind of share powers and share troops. And it was very interesting. I enjoyed this a lot. I would certainly play this again. I don't need to back it. I have Rising Sun, or excuse me, I have Blood Rage, but I'm looking to get rid of Blood Rage. I had Rising Sun. I sold that on eBay a couple months ago. I like these games a lot, but knowing that other people have them in the play group, it's not something I'm going to play here. I would definitely play this again, but it did feel like it scratched a similar itch to Kemet, which is my number 2 game of all time, and I think Kemet's better. So I liked it. I'll play this again. I'll be happy to play this again. But if given the option, I definitely pick Kemet over it. But I think it's worth checking out. It was a lot of fun, and I would definitely play with the expansions, new gods, new monsters, all sorts of stuff. So it's a fun experience. But a lot of these come on games are like very much, I call them like light lifestyle games. They're not like a lifestyle game like
Sure.
Magic or 40K, but almost. So
No, I get what you're saying, and that makes sense. I get that. I like that analogy because they do reward investment, right?
yes.
In terms of your time and familiarization and things like that, for sure.
And even painting the figures and all of that. So
Painting.
what I will say is anytime one of us, that's what it is. The upgrade action is called the Ankh action. And anytime someone would say the Ankh action, they're taking the Ankh action, we'd have to go, Ankh. That's what we did all night. Ankh.
Ankh. Am I ready to play? Ankh. Got it.
It adds a whole half point to the score. So that is Ankh or Ankh, Gods of Egypt by Come On and Eric Lang.
Well done. I've heard really positive things about the game from a number of people whose game taste I trust. And similar to you, Kemet is a top 5 game. It's not my number 2, but it's a top 5 game for me. I love Kemet. And that's actually, we've bonded over our love of Kemet before.
Yeah, absolutely.
And, but I would like to try Ankh. Thankfully, I didn't back it myself. Thankfully, similar to you, right? We have this circle of friends and acquaintances. Somebody's going to have it, right? And a good friend of mine did, got the whole thing, has the whole stack of like 30 boxes up on their bookshelf right now, ready to play. So I'm going to maybe give them an elbow to give it a try. Well, I got the memo a little late, so apologies that I talked about Scout first. I'm sure I could have found a different Come On game. But
I didn't realize that. I totally didn't realize that.
For this Come On sponsored show, Fairy Tale Inn, which definitely is the on part of Come On because it's the or not part, right? Fairy Tale Inn is a 2-player only game designed by Remo Conzadori and Paolo Mori. Paolo Mori is a designer that I greatly admire and tend to follow his work. And here comes Fairy Tale Inn. So Fairy Tale Inn has a very cutesy box, and you're going to open it up, and you are going to get a tall plastic stand. When you look at this stand, something's going to go, this feels familiar. And that's because it's going to remind you of Connect 4, except like molded to look a little like a log cabin, I guess, and the openings are squares instead of circles. So that's right, Fairy Tale Inn is kind of like Connect 4 in that you're going to be dropping tokens down the top of the tower and drop them into one of the 7 columns across the playing field, right? And you can see your side of the board and your opponent can see their side of the board as you're sitting across the table from each other. Now, what happens is that you've got a number of different fairy tale characters that you're going to be able to pick from, and you're only going to play with 4 or 5, I think, in a game. So there's some variability here, right? Because they give you, say, 10 characters, and you get to mix and match them into different combinations and try that out, which is a nice thing. And basically, you are going to be trying to earn the most money by hosting the most advantageous fairy tale inn and get all the guests in. So there's a little player board that comes out, and you're going to randomly shuffle these tokens in the bag that's provided and lay a few tokens out. On your turn, you're going to pick a token off of this board. Higher up, you may have to pay a coin to grab a token that's really desirable for you. The lower ones are free. And you're going to drop it into the column of your choice. Now, the tokens are 2-sided in that one side has full color art and one side has the same art, but it's an outline. It's like just a blue and white outline. And you're going to drop the token so that the full color side faces you. That indicates you own that token. But your opponent sees what it is as well. And what you're trying to do is, we make the joke about Connect 4, but it's more complicated than that for sure. What you're trying to do is you're trying to play these tokens for advantageous positioning because each character scores itself in a different way. So the token that represents that character, maybe you're going to get more coins if you have it diagonal. So like, for example, the Snow White style character. If you have Snow Whites in a diagonal line, you're going to compound your score for each future Snow White token. Or maybe the 3 little pigs want to be adjacent to each other. So the more little pig tokens that you can get in clusters, the more points you're going to get for the next ones that you add to that cluster. Whereas something like the Big Bad Wolf will score if you have more Big Bad Wolves in a line than your opponent. So that's where the double-sided comes in. You drop down a Big Bad Wolf, you can see it, great, you own that one. But if your opponent drops down a Big Bad Wolf, you're going to see the outline. That doesn't count towards your row control, that counts towards your opponent's row control, that kind of thing. So you can see what your opponent is plotting and what they're doing. That's why they're double-sided. It doesn't indicate, it indicates ownership and planning. So you're going to continue on until, I really just totally blanked on what triggers the end game. Oh, it's when 3 columns are completed. So when 3 columns are completely filled, that triggers the end game. And you're going to see who gets the most coins. So some tokens will score as soon as you drop them. Oh, 3 little pigs, great. You score 5 tokens and you grab the coins right away. And some, like the Big Bad Wolf, will score at the end of the game. So you count up any end game coins, and whoever's earned the most money wins the game. It's rules-wise very, very straightforward. But I got to say, I wasn't sure what to expect when I picked it up, but I really, really like this one. And it feels like a 2-player game that maybe flew a little under a lot of people's radar. I'm not sure why that was. It came out in the middle of the pandemic, that kind of thing. But Fairy Tale Inn, solid 2-player game. Really. The Connect 4 thing where you have to plan out, that dropping and what you're covering up and what that opens up and what that opens your opponent up to, in terms of creating dynamic lines and things like that, is really interesting. And the character powers and how they are different from each other, and how when you mix and match them, maybe they conflict with each other a little bit more, maybe they help each other a little bit more. All of that works really, really well. I like this game a lot. Now, a game is good when your biggest complaint is this tower. So here's my biggest complaint about this silly game, Sean.
Okay.
The stand is one solid piece of plastic. And to make it stable, that means the flared out base units are, 4 inches wide at the very bottom to make the tower very stable. And it is. It is a solid piece. It is a very strong component. It forces them to make the box really, really thick. And if those legs had just been removable so that you could snap them on right before you play, it's just 2 legs. They could have made that box so much slimmer. And I wish they had done that, because it is a very large box. And in fact, I have a friend that, I played this with, and he really liked the game, but he's like, I'm not going to buy this game. I love this game. I play it with my wife all the time, but we're not going to buy it because this box takes up too much shelf space. Because of that. And for us avid gamers that have hundreds of games in our collection, that becomes a serious thing, right? And I get it, but I like Fairy Tale Inn so much, I am keeping it. It's worth it to me because it's a really great game. I shouldn't have been surprised with the name Paolo Mori on the box, but there you go. If you have not checked it out and you get 2-player games to the table, Fairy Tale Inn is definitely worth a look.
So, and it is a 3-inch box, I believe.
Okay, whatever, lawyer. I didn't look it up.
No. It's interesting because I've had a similar complaint about too much box for a certain game, or a series of games even, called Unmatched.
Okay, fair enough. I mean, well, and honestly, if you're collecting them, if you kept all the boxes, that would take up a lot of shelf space. I get that.
And the hard part, and I still have all of the boxes. They're still taking up all the space. The hard part is that the insert has spots for everything, and you just hate. It's a good insert, and you just hate to be like, oh, I can just take out all the inserts and throw everything into one box, because then you just feel bad for a good insert. I don't feel bad when I throw away a bad insert. Like, that's
right.
fine.
Yeah, I get that.
You know what I mean? So.
Yeah, I do. I mean, restoration games might be working on engineering a storage solution, but, because that could be something that avid fans of Unmatched are vocally demanding, pleasantly requesting every day. So, or Or maybe not. Who knows?
Or maybe not. Okay.
I don't know. I know nothing.
Fair enough. All right. Well, my last come on game is Marvel United X-Men, designed by Andrea Chiaravesio, Eric Lang, and Francesco Rugafred Seda. Perfect. Nailed it. 100%. Yeah, so this is a cooperative game with these cute little Marvel chibi miniatures. And you are taking on the role of an X-Men. And you're each a different X-Men, and then you pick a villain to fight against. And there are these little cards that represent different locations. And at those locations, you will put out these little sub-villains. And then also henchmen will pop up, and then civilians you have to rescue will pop up. And the main mechanic of the game is it's kind of a hand management, deck management game where you are playing, you're playing a card from your hand, and you are then using all of the effects on that card, plus the previous card that's been played by one of your teammates. And it's this whole idea of these are different comic panels, and you are creating this whole kind of strip of comic strip. That's not really a comic strip, but just a progression of panels in a comic book. Now, as far as the different actions, there's this move, there is like the special interact, and then there is attack. And so we played against Magneto. This was also Jeremy's game. So I was Beast, Raquel was Jean Grey, and Jeremy was somebody. I forget who Jeremy was. I think he was Professor X. He was Professor X. And we played against Magneto. And so basically you have to rescue a certain number of civilians. You have to defeat a certain number of henchmen. And then I forget what the third thing is. You have to interact with a certain number of locations, and then you could start beating up on Magneto. And so it's pretty interesting. So you play your cards and you're like, okay, I need to move, and you move either clockwise or counterclockwise. The locations are a ring; they're a circle, so they go back on themselves. And so you're very much just moving around, trying to make sure that too many henchmen don't pop up in one area, because that can cause this like overflow thing that happens. You want to make sure that the bad guys aren't hurting the civilians. And it was fun. Very much a beer and pretzels type cooperative game. I do own the original Marvel United.
Oh, I was going to ask you.
Yeah, I have that. It's been sitting in a box for a long time. I bought it initially because, again, Marvel fanboy. I remember showing it to Chewie and Raquel and Mariah, and they all fell in love with the chibi Marvel miniatures. And it's been sitting in a box, mostly knowing that, especially in the last couple months, like, oh, I should probably paint these if we're gonna keep this and play it. But after our game, I leaned over to Raquel and I said, "So, are we keeping our copy?" And she was like, I don't think so. There wasn't, as far as a cooperative game goes, and we'll kind of talk about this with the loop. I don't think there was enough here for her, and maybe there wasn't really enough there for me. I mean, I'm sure there's all sorts of different combinations in terms of the different heroes you're going to play with, the different villains you're going to play with, different difficulties, and all of that. But again, we're kind of going back to this whole kind of come on philosophy. And it was like this with Arcadia Quest, a game that I love. There's just so much content, and it's almost too much content unless that's going to be the focus of your gaming for a significant period of time. So I'll play it again. I'll be happy to play it again. And Jeremy has been painting his minis and they look fantastic. So kudos to him. But yeah, I don't think, well, we're going to get rid of our copy of the original.
Well, son of a biscuit, man. I wish you had told me this earlier, because I went all the heck in on X-Men Marvel United. But this is after playing original Marvel United. So I did not go all in on the original Kickstarter for Marvel United. And then I bought a copy off the shelf retail, just of the base game. And we love it.
Yeah.
And so then that forced me, like twisted my arm behind my back, held my bank account hostage, forced me to go big all in on the X-Men Marvel, like big all in on the X-Men Marvel United campaign, when I could have just gotten it second market off of you. Ding dang it. Saved a few bucks probably. I get what you're saying, Sean, and I mean, you got your right to your feelings about it, but personally, I just want to point out a few things.
Yeah.
The heroes, I would say, I think people who are into United have recognized that the villains are where the game really starts to shine in terms of variability. The heroes, you pick the ones that you like because you like their story or things like that. And certainly that's how like my kids pick. But man, when you start throwing in the different villains and the different way you attack them, I think that becomes super duper fun. Mm-hmm. Also, I play a fair number of games solo. I love Marvel United solo. Yeah. It's chill. It's fun and it's engaging and you still feel like you're making choices, but it's like it's not a high stress game. It's quick and easy to set up and throw down and things like that, depending on how you've got your boxes organized. So, I'm really wishing you could have just shoved this forward a little bit more, man, so I could have bought your copy.
Well, bummer. Yeah, it's in another lifetime. I'd have, I don't know. It's just hard. There's so many, like even with like CCGs, even with like Marvel Champions, I'm just like, I'm finding it harder and harder to find time to play stuff like that. And like, that's a game I'll play solo because it's relatively quick and easy to set up. I
love it. Yeah. No, and I think that with you, Sean, for me, I have other hobbies, but board gaming is my big one, but you have another big hobby, right? And so I totally get where your time and how you allocate it for solo gaming or whatever is different because you're painting.
I feel like I'm being pushed away from owning any game that has miniatures in it. Because because then I'm like, oh, well, I should totally paint these miniatures. And anytime I spend painting miniatures for a board game, I'm like, oh, I'm totally neglecting getting these armies ready for play for Warhammer or
you've backed yourself in your corner. But I know how you feel about painting minis and playing games with unpainted minis.
Oh, it's terrible.
Right? Terrible. It just tears at your soul.
It does. It really does.
Tough one, buddy. Tough one.
All right. Well, I think that does it for our 3/4 Come On sponsored recent play segment. We're going to go to a quick commercial break, and then we'll be back with our featured review of The Loop.
Well, Sean, the Game Toppers 3.0 Kickstarter is in the books, and thanks to a whole bunch of backers, Game Toppers had a heck of a Kickstarter campaign, more than $800,000 raised to get more Game Toppers, new features, all sorts of fun stuff headed folks' way.
Wait, did you say 800,000?
I did say that amount. Yes.
Oh my goodness. That's a ton of money.
Sean, did you make it in time? Are you part of that group?
It's over? It's over? Like over?
No, it's done. I'm sorry you missed your window. But the good news, Sean, is that if you keep an eye on the Game Toppers LLC website, the late pledge manager should be open in the near future. Take a look there, and you can still get in on all the fun, get the newest features, get yourself a Watson, or get yourself, I don't know, whatever you want. Awesome game mats, rails, something cool to really take your gaming experience to the next level without getting a fully dedicated gaming table, which is exactly what Game Toppers is all about. Check them out, GameToppersLLC.com, because if it ain't a showstopper, it ain't a Game Topper.
There you are. A time agency agent, which sounds redundant a little bit, but I guess technically it's not. And Dr. Foe is creating all sorts of hassles throughout the timeline. Are you enough to stop him? I don't know. And I don't like this intro. And I need Alex back to do these. Maybe I should have asked him to script this for me. Let's find out if The Loop is any good.
This is why Alex needs to take off every once in a while. just gives you little moments like this where you realize how much you appreciate his presence in your life and in the podcast.
Well, I give it short shrift, right? Like even last episode, I'm just like, whatever. Let's talk about the game. But here we are talking about The Loop, designed by Maxime Romberg and Theo Riviere, with art by Simon Caruso. And this is published by Pandasaurus Games. The Loop is a quirky cooperative game in which you play as a temporal agent and battle the evil Dr. Foe, gather powerful artifacts, defy the Doctor's clones, and sabotage his maniacal machine. Make the most of your cards and master the Loop to use them multiple times in impressive chains. But the Doctor isn't going to make this easy on you. The evil Dr. Foe has built a terrible time machine. With the help of the clones of himself that he is creating throughout the ages, he aims to carry out his Omniscience 2000 project to become master of the universe. But the rifts that he is opening in space-time will probably destroy quantum space way sooner. Join the agency in the shoes of one of its most legendary agents and cooperate to foil the fiendish schemes of Dr. Foe using quirky but still powerful artifacts. What do you think of that for a little overview from the publisher?
I think the biggest problem I have with that overview is that I don't know that Dr. Foe's name really comes through in audio.
No. It's F-A-U-X, like a faux pas.
Right, which is false in French.
Right. So, okay. Well, all right, let's talk about this cooperative game. So you and your friends are trying to beat this Dr. Foe. You're these temporal agents, and you're trying to do this mostly by sabotaging his machine. There are these sabotage tiles that will pop up throughout the game, and there are certain prerequisites for them, and you complete them, and you do that 4 times. You have damaged his machine. There are different modules, and there may be some other requirements, but generally that's what you're trying to do. I'm going to explain throughout this rules overview the ways that you can lose, because it's a cooperative game, so there's got to be a bunch of different ways that you can lose. You're going to place out in front of you the space-time board. It's sort of this circular-ish board. It has these wedges of 7 great eras of time. Dr. Foe's machine is in the center, and it's sort of kind of a cube tower, in that you're going to drop some cubes in and it's going to spit them out either left, middle, or right, which will then, during the turns, go on to the different time eras, which will have some effect, which I'll describe in a second here. Additionally, you're going to seed the board with some clones. These are these little tokens that, like I mentioned in the intro, are clones of Dr. Foe. Throughout the game, you have to take actions to defeat the clones by moving them into the same era that is printed on their token itself. But also the presence of clones are bad because they might increase the number of cubes, the red rift cubes that you have to place at the start of each turn, which I'll describe again some more. I keep feeling like I'm saying that a lot. Okay, then you're going to place these sabotage tiles face down around the board. You're going to flip over a couple to start the game with. There's always 2 that you reveal, and that's going to tell you what you're trying to do in that particular point of the game. It might be that you have to collect the green energy cubes that are in Dr. Foe's current era, or you have to defeat clones from different eras. Lots of different options there for the sabotage tiles. At the start of the game, you're also going to seed some of those red rift cubes and some of those green energy cubes onto the board. Those energy cubes you'll be using to perform certain actions on your turns. Then each player is going to get their own player card. You have asymmetric powers, things that you kind of do usually once per turn. You're also going to get your starter deck, which is a deck of artifact cards throughout space and time. And you're going to start with 3 cards in play, or I guess in your hand, 3 of those artifact cards randomly. All right, so you're set up. We're going to take turns. At the start of the turn, there is the Dr. Foe phase, where you're going to flip over the top card from this Dr. Foe deck. There are 7 cards in the deck. They correspond to each of the eras. And whichever card you draw is going to determine which era Dr. Foe is in. So you're going to rotate his little time machine in the center of the board so the little middle shoot is pointed there. You're then going to populate clones. It'll tell you where to populate clones. It's also going to tell you where to put out a new artifact card in one of those eras that can get picked up later by a player. And then you're going to add rift cubes. It's always at least 2, but you're going to add an extra rift cube for each clone in Dr. Fo's era. You're going to pop those into the time machine, and then it's going to spit them out left, middle, right. And you care about these because if at any time there are 4 rift cubes in a time era, it's going to create a vortex. It's basically kind of blowing up that era, so to speak. And you will lose if one era ever has 2 vortexes or vortices, if I'm going to be proper, or if there are 4 vortices throughout the board, different time areas. That's one of the ways that you're going to lose as well. Okay, so you do that Dr. Fo phase. Now it's your action phase. This is the heart of the turn. You are also on the board. You have these nice little wooden meeples that represent you. They're very, very different shapes because there's like this big hulking guy and littler guys. And you're going to need to kind of move your guy around. You're going to need to take actions that are moving the clones around, that are removing red cubes, all sorts of things. But most of this is dictated by the artifact cards that you have in play. For the most part, you can use each artifact card one time, and it's going to say, okay, go ahead and do this. Go ahead and remove this rift cube. Or it's going to say, hey, you can move to another spot where there's another agent of yours. And then there's also sort of these free moves. You get 1 free move a turn. You could also spend an energy cube from the era you're in to move to an adjacent era. You can do that as much as you want. But then the really cool thing is you get to loop. Hey, that's the name of the game. Looping is you're doing a time loop where basically you are untapping all artifacts of yours of a particular suit. And there are, I think, 3 suits in the game, and then there's like 1 non-suit.
The black hole.
And so there's a bit of a deck building element here where if you can really load up your deck with the same suit, then you're going to get to untap when you loop a bunch of them at once. So a loop can be really powerful. Maybe you just untap one thing, but if they're all the same suit, I'm going to untap 3 things, get to use them all again. Super cool. You can loop up to 3 times in your turn. The first time it costs you an energy resource from the board. Second time it costs you 2. Third time it costs you 3. So it can definitely get expensive. Now, once you're done doing all your actions, you're then going to search your era for artifact cards. If there is an artifact card in that era, you can pick one, put it on top of your deck, so you're guaranteed to draw it at the end of your turn. Additionally, if you have achieved the goal of the different sabotage tiles and you're on that era spot with that sabotage tile, you can archive it at the end of your turn. And again, you need to archive 4 sabotage tiles, plus whatever other mission things are required in order to win the game. So you can do this either until you've done all of the archiving you need to do, one of the lose game conditions has been met, or you might also lose if you go through the Dr. Fo deck 3 times. So basically 21 turns is sort of the timer there. And yeah, either you, the agents, win or Dr. Fo wins, and that's how you play the loop. So Suze, what was your impression of not impression of the game, but what was your expectations for the game? Is this something you heard about, something you were keeping an eye out for?
So my impressions of the game from the first time I saw the loop was the box, right? I just saw maybe in social media somewhere, I saw the box and I was immediately impressed, right? It was eye-catching. The art style is very, very eye-catching. And then when I looked into it, I am unfamiliar with Maxime, but I'm familiar with Theo Riviere, one of the co-designers, and I'm a fan of Theo's work in general. So between the art and then Theo, I was like, okay, this looks really interesting. But if I am correct, this was actually published overseas. So I think when I first saw it, it was a European edition. And Sean, as you may know, I have maybe put a lot of effort and a lot of money into picking up games from Europe or from Asia that are hard to get in the United States because I have a problem. And so when I saw the loop, I stopped myself from buying it immediately because I'm trying to manage my problem
Impulse
and
control.
be smart. And then, bless Pandasaurus, they saw the announcement that they picked up, and I was overjoyed, and that my patience, see, managing my problem was the right thing to do because I don't mind waiting. I just want the game, right? So that was when I first saw it. I knew it was overseas, and I was instantly interested in it, but I waited. And so, yeah, when Pandasaurus announced that they came out with it, I was excited to give it a try. Even though I haven't always been a fan of cooperative games in the past, I've actually found over the last couple of years, I've developed a new appreciation for them. And so even the cooperative element, I was still excited to give it a whirl. That was kind of where I was coming from.
Okay. This game was in no way, shape, or form on my radar. In fact, we at Extra Life, we had broken up into two groups, and the options were to play Korra, The Rise of an Empire, or The Loop. And Korra, The Rise of an Empire looks like a spreadsheet, and it is a spreadsheet game in a lot of ways. And then there was this bright, colorful The Loop, and of course, I gravitated towards the spreadsheet. So I said, I'm gonna go play Korra. Because that looks more interesting to me. And then everyone else went to play The Loop, and everyone liked it. Everyone came back and like, yeah, that was really good. We really enjoyed The Loop. It was a pretty interesting, thinky, puzzly, cooperative game. So I'm like, oh, okay. Well, I guess I'd be interested to play it. And then when the new thing that I do to pick a review game very often is I'll take pictures of what Empire has brand new, so I don't run into problems of thinking Empire has something and then we can't find it. I send it to Alex and say, hey, what do you want to review next? And did the same with you. And you said, let's do Cascadia, or I forget what the other
right. But I had forgotten that Alex and Abby had done that already. Right.
Right. And so I'm like, okay, The Loop, cool. And I was at least encouraged by having heard of people with similar gaming tastes to myself having enjoyed The Loop. I'm like, okay, cool. Let's do The Loop. So, but really going into it not knowing a whole lot about it.
Okay.
So, did you learn the game from the rule book, or was it taught to you?
I learned the game from a video and then read the rule book, and then I taught it to a few different people.
Okay. I did not read the rule book. Well, that's not true. I did read the rule book, but I read it earlier tonight after my plays. And I was taught the game by Eugene. And so what did you think of the rule book?
I thought it was fine.
Yeah.
I thought it was fine. I've played a lot of games. I've read a lot of rule books, and I think, working in the industry a little bit more and being exposed a little bit more to the process of making these things, I think I've really gained a new appreciation for sometimes trying to distinguish between what I feel is a quote unquote bad rule book versus a rule book that flows in a different way than my brain learns.
Sure.
Right? Because everybody learns differently. I mean, that's why it's nice to have a rule book, or nice to have tutorial videos. And that's why it's nice to have a variety of tutorial videos, because different people who run these videos do things differently and that kind of thing. And so as I'm thinking through rule books, I try to keep that in mind now. So I think overall, the rule book was fine for me. Like but I'd already had the context of watching a video beforehand. So it was more like affirming details as I was going
Sure.
through. And I had context already with what I was reading. So that may have smoothed the path for me.
Well, this type of rule book is one of my big pet peeves, and it's the big 12 by 12 rule book.
Yes. I
I
get
hate
it.
the 12 by 12s.
Yep.
They're not easy to handle, like as you're reading it, and then they take up a lot of table space when you're actually playing the game. So whatever, it's fine. I've complained about that plenty. But having read the rule book tonight, just to kind of just so I can literally have something to say about this particular subtopic of our review. I think it was a fine rule book. I think what helps is that the turn structure is broken down in such a way that I think is intuitive. And I think it was a relatively easy teach for Eugene. And I think it was a relatively easy pickup to learn, because it's one of those things where I think the core rules aren't super difficult. It's not a light game by any means, but most of the complexity is the interaction of the artifact cards and the player powers, I think.
Right.
So.
Yeah, I think the hardest part of the game that a rule book kind of deals with is just remembering the order of everything you're doing in the Dr. Foe phase.
Right.
And it's just real minor stuff. It's not a big deal. It's like, okay, do you put out the clone first and then put out the artifact card and then drop the cubes and then like check for this? There's some, but like that's not a complaint. That's not even really a criticism. It's just a quirk, right? And so be it. And I think it's fine. Yeah, so I think the rule book's fine.
Okay. What did you think about the art of the game?
Love it.
How would you describe this art?
It's cartoonish. It's illustrative and it's cartoonish, right? It's very line drawn style. It's not painterly or anything like that, and it looks like it's kind of cartoon. It's a mod. It's kind of a mod cartoon. Maybe a little bit of like a Powerpuff Girls vibe to it.
Okay. Yeah, there you go. That's what I was thinking. I couldn't remember.
Okay.
Like sort of like a 60s aesthetic, maybe, like.
Yeah, for sure. Like a 60s,
like 60s
mod.
sci-fi. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Which I think is super duper fun.
Define mod for me, because I felt like I knew what it meant. Now I'm just like, maybe I don't know what it means.
Well,
like Mod Squad?
Kinda like bold graphic, like a lot of like bold graphics and bold colors and big print is kind of that mod design era, right? The big flower patterns and the big wall patterns, the big bold graphic design stuff that used to happen.
When I look up mod on Google, it's just a bunch of mods for Grand Theft Auto 5. Like
think about Andy Warhol and think about Austin Powers.
Yeah.
Okay, like all the costume design and colors and prints that you saw there, I put that all in kind of that mod era.
Okay,
which I think was here with the loop.
I think that is a very succinct way to describe it, and because I didn't know exactly what it meant, I just made it worse. But thank you. I think
huzzah! I win this round. Haha.
Yeah, I dug it. Like it's even though it's not that the art pushed me away when making the initial choice between Korra and the loop. It's just I like spreadsheets and I want to play spreadsheet games as much as possible.
Oh, totally. Yeah.
So
well, and similarly, like I think 4 years ago, I would have veered away from the loop because it's cooperative. Yeah. I would have if I had assessed that shelf and knew, these 5 games are competitive and this one game is cooperative. Not even, oh yeah, it's pretty, but it's cooperative. It would have pushed it like to the bottom of that list of games to play. But I've evolved and I've grown. And so that, I kind of moved past that. So I think the aesthetics are great and the component quality is strong overall, which is very typical of Pandasaurus. What I would highlight randomly, perhaps, is the center of the board. The center of the game is this tower, is Dr. Foe, which represents, I guess, Dr. Foe himself in a way, right?
His time machine, yeah.
Yeah, his time machine. Okay. And when you get it, you have to assemble it. And you punch out some cardboard. So it's got a plastic piece at the bottom, a plastic which has the 3 chutes, and then a little plastic cap. And then you punch some cardboard and wrap it around and tuck it all together. And then Bob's your uncle, it's done. We're putting it together. And I remember when after I got set up and we played it the first time, we were all impressed with how well that tower worked. Mm-hmm. As you're dropping cubes in and we're seeing variability, we saw like you definitely had a shot. It was going to count the summer, but it felt like the distribution within the workings of it worked out well overall. So it wasn't 100% predictable and it just functioned real well. We got back in the box without, disassembling it or anything like that. So I was really happy of all things with that centerpiece of the cube tower, essentially, Dr. Foe himself, and like that a lot as a component that they put in the game.
Yeah, I think overall component wise, it's a really solid production.
Yeah.
I like the big chunky meeples. What's a meeple? The big chunky meeples for the player pieces.
Yep, which are all, not just different colors, but they are also very different shapes and things like that. Yeah.
Right. And I think good quality cardstock on all the board components. And yeah, the time machine, the little module in the center is pretty interesting. And yeah, it worked pretty well. We would always, of course, blame each other for whoever dropped them. Like
Yeah,
control.
we did that too.
I can't believe you did that. Why would you do that? What's wrong with you?
We played a game, this one game I played, I think it was my first game. We actually, like, one person did a really good drop.
Yeah.
Where the luck was with us. And then one person did a really bad drop. And so we stopped letting the person who did the bad drop, and we went back to the person who did a good drop. Like, that had anything to do with it.
Yeah. No, it's always fun, like, the superstition that comes into that and the ritual.
Yeah.
It's fun. So
so component quality, great job.
Yeah. No, I think this is a very solid production. All right. So let's get to the meat then, the gameplay. Oh, wait, I know you don't like meat. So let's get to what's a good side. I'm seeing, I'm thinking of, Suze, I'm thinking of all of the pictures I'm seeing because BGG Con's going on right now and everyone going to Hard 8 and just all the meats. And then just remembering, like, you don't eat meats and you're just like, well, they've got good sides. So.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Yeah. All the mac and cheese and the corn. Oh, the jalapeno cream corn. So good.
Oh, by the way, this is the 5-year anniversary of us playing Terraforming Mars with Patrick Hillier. You, me, Alex, and Patrick playing Terraforming Mars at BGG Con. It came up on my Facebook feed today.
Aww.
And he auctioned, or he bid on that for the Jack Vassal Memorial Fund. So I saw that. I was like, oh, that's 5 years ago today. That's good time.
Time flies. Wow.
Right?
Oh, my goodness. Well, I would say, Sean, I appreciate you trying to be thoughtful about my vegetarianism, but we could also just say, let's get to the filling, like the pie filling.
Ah, very nice.
Aha!
But is crust not important, though, to pies?
Fair. Okay. All right. But art and components is actually, I mean, let's stop now because I'm about to make a full end-to-end analogy between a double crust pie and a board game, and I don't think anybody wants to hear that.
My favorite pie is pecan pie. All right. So we've got the pecan topping, then you've got the custard filling, and then you've got the crust.
Yes.
So what's what in a board game experience there? Is the filling gameplay?
The filling would be gameplay, right?
Okay. Yeah, all right.
Okay. We'll go with it.
What's the pecan topping?
It's easier if it's a double crust pie. You would pick pecan. That makes it much harder, Sean. Darn it.
Well, it's the best. It's the best pie.
I agree. I really liked it. I had a lot of fun with it. I like the loop mechanism and the card play a lot. There's a lot of cards in there, and each character has a different starting deck and, kind of catered to that character's ability in the game, which I like, and I've tried a few of those, and I like that they actually kind of lead you down a strategic path for the player power. I mean, you don't have to go with it, but I like that there's enough differentiation that they do feel like you're targeting something slightly different, which is nice as a player to feel some variety in that. So the card play was something I wasn't sure of going into my first play of it and really, really ended up enjoying. I think that the loop mechanism and trying to build up a really solid deck, which I could see being something that you'd really appreciate, Sean, is something I really, really enjoy doing and got better at as I went. I like the clone manipulation around the different eras and how you can plan that out. Certainly there's like table collaboration as you're thinking about, well, I can do this or you can do that and that kind of thing. I like that teamwork element, and that really worked, especially at some critical tense points where you're trying to make key decisions. And I think what I found as I went along, don't underestimate the importance of those green cubes. I forget what they're called. Darn it.
Energy. I think they're just energy cubes.
Yeah. Wow. So getting those energy cubes on the board and knowing when to just go for it and just use them all, like loop, 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 because you said it in your intro a little bit earlier at some point, Sean, where you're talking about if you get a really solid deck built up of all one symbol type so that when you're looping, you can maximize it. That's true. But as you're spending energy, sometimes even if you don't have an optimal layout of 3 cards or up to 4 cards that align, it's still worth looping at critical points depending on what cards are out there, right? And getting a feel for that helped as you went along, because that was the other thing about this game. So I want to be really transparent. The game includes like 4 different ways to play. I've only played the base game, and I've lost all, I think, 3 times. So fair enough. I mean, maybe I'm just bad at games. Maybe my friends and I are just bad at games. So be it. And I'm willing to, I still like games. But I found the game very challenging.
Yeah.
Which is a good thing. Now, some of them, 2 of them were very, very, very close. One of them was just a bad game and, stuff happens, whatever. But I liked that they were close. I liked that tension. It felt like we were just one turn away from winning, and, the chips didn't fall where we wanted them to, that kind of thing. Like, if you got to manage those clones too, right? Moving them around is fun. It's also very important, right? Because if you're dropping 5 cubes down that tower, you're in trouble. So there's a lot going on in the game. I liked the collaboration. I liked the Dr. Foe deck that you could kind of know where the hot spots as they winnow down each of the 3 rounds. You're like, okay, the red, the orange, the purple, and the blue have been played. So we know that these are the hot zone areas. So these are the areas that we definitely have to manage for those red cubes. But then you're also looking at like, okay, which goals are open and ones that we can complete versus, and then, oh, wait, this one already has a sabotage on it. And there's 2, or not a void. And there's 2 red cubes on it. We got to do that. Like, there's a lot of tension and a lot of things you're juggling. It felt like plate spinning, right?
Yeah, that's a good description.
That's not a criticism. It just felt like you really did have too much to do in any given turn. So choosing what you did was absolutely critical, and mitigating the bad luck of where those cubes came out from Dr. Foe, mitigating and planning for the luck of which card's going to come up for the next active era that he's pointing at, and working as a team to make that happen. That's what made the loop work for me as a cooperative game experience. I liked that there was too much for any one person to do, because it really kind of not forced you, but it made it feel natural that you were all trying to work together as a team. So overall, yeah, I really like a lot of what's going on in Loop, and there's a lot going on. I do have, of course, a few criticisms or things that I didn't enjoy as much. So first of all, the missions that you have to complete, right? They're randomized around, and then they are randomly revealed, and you can only have 2 up at a given time. So you're only dealing with 2 at a time. On one hand, it's really nice for focus in terms of what you're trying to accomplish, and I think that's a very positive thing. On the other hand, I did notice that some of them are easier to complete depending on when they come up, and that can be fairly significant in terms of that. So, for example, there's one where you have to get it so an era has no cubes, red cubes, and no clones on it. And you have to do that like in multiple different eras, and then you can complete this one. Cool. Well, if that's the 4th one you flip, the board is so full at that time, it feels almost impossible to do. Now, I can say this because it came up in 2 different games. So in the first game, it came up early, and we got it, and we were having fun trying to conquer, and we beat it, and yay. In one of the other games I played, it came up like the last one. And so you feel like you're so close, and then you're looking at this mammoth board that's full of clones and cubes everywhere, and you've got, a void out there, so if that void flips, you're done and all that. And then this one flips, and we're like, oh my gosh, we're never going to be able to do this one. So the timing of that is a little sensitive to me on terms of which missions reveal and when. The other thing that and this is maybe just partly me, is I did find there could be some downtime, because you get to play your whole turn, right, you're flipping over you've got your hand, which is displayed. And then if you loop, that's cool. And I just found, and maybe it was just with, the games I was in, but in a 4-player game, by the time it came back around, I was waiting for my turn. I
Sure.
was waiting for it to happen. Even though it's cooperative and you're collaborating, ultimately you're the only one that knows your deck, and you're the one that's looking straight at it and planning your moves and looking at the board and assessing what energy you want to use and things like that. So a lot is happening in your turn, which is great on your turn. But as you're watching, 3 other players take you're kind of like, okay, when's up my turn? I want my turn, right?
Right.
So I felt like there was a little bit of a downtime thing for me personally that was a little better at 3. 3 is interesting compared to 4 because Dr. Foe kind of, how often does Dr. Foe go versus the players go? And there's not a lot of scaling for player count between 3 and 4 or anything like that. I think it's just like some setup stuff. But I think I preferred it ultimately 3 just because I felt like I got my turns quicker.
Yeah.
But beyond that,
makes
I mean,
sense.
those were probably the 2 things that stood out to me in terms of like the things that were kind of on the iffy side for me on the loop.
So yeah, and I didn't notice the downtime as much because I only played at 3, and I think I would. There's a great many games I would resist playing at 4. Like I tend
Fair.
to not
Very
like
fair.
4-player games.
Fair.
And so I would probably look to avoid this at 4. But it's interesting to hear you kind of confirm that. Certainly, there could be downtime at 3. We didn't experience a whole lot. My big kind of takeaway from this, I enjoyed this quite a bit too. My big takeaway is that in a lot of cooperative games, you have the things that you can do and you do them, right? You are responding tactically to the flip of the city cards in Pandemic, and what cards you draw from the deck. But for the most part, the things that you can do are fairly static.
Mhm.
And it's just, am I doing those static things in the best order, the most efficient order? Here, it's what you can do is not static. What you can do is changing
Mhm.
every round because of the different artifact cards, right? I don't know if I fully explained that. You on your turn, at the end of your turn, you get rid of all of the artifact cards that you played, and you draw 3 new artifact cards. And to me, that's huge. To me, it made it like 3-dimensional chess instead of just normal 2D chess, right? Because you have to respond to all of the rift cubes that are popping out and the clones that are popping out, and I've got to do the sabotage missions and all of those things. But also, what I could do last turn, I can't necessarily do this turn, or I could do some variation of it, but maybe it's going to be less efficient because I have 3 different suits instead of 1 suit, and my loops are going to be less efficient. I really dug that. Like I really enjoyed, okay, how do I respond to the situation with what I've got in front of me? So it kind of took like the tactical approach and cranked it up quite a bit. And then plus, you do have to worry about everything else that's going on. So I dug that. It felt very puzzly, and it felt and I'm trying to think of what other cooperative games where what you can do every turn drastically changes from one turn to the next. And I mean, I guess games where you're choosing actions from playing cards, which is what this is. But I enjoyed it. It felt very fresh in my mind for some reason. And also there's a lot of information for you to deduce, like you were saying before. Hey, we know that of the 7 eras, these 5 have already dropped. We don't need to worry about this one because it's pretty bare. But if this one pops up, that could wind up costing us the game. So we know that we gotta work towards that this particular round before we see the next Dr. Foe card flip. So I certainly dug it. And I think I was pretty surprised at how much I enjoyed it. And even thinking about back to it now, I'm still surprised how much I enjoyed it. We played, so I played the base game, and I played one of the modules that had has these super clones. And these super clones are these different little tokens, And I'm trying to remember. There's something about them that's harder to kill, and now I'm completely blanking.
Oh, they're when one of them gets destroyed, you have to generate on that
Yes.
era.
Yeah, but I thought there was something else too. So yeah, more clones pop out when you kill them, but I thought there was something that made them harder to kill, and now I'm blanking. I'll see if I can figure that out. But the really cool thing is also when you kill them, they generate this perpetual energy cube, and it's this little blue energy cube, and it just stays in that era that you killed them, and you could spend it perpetually, right? So let's say that I'm on that space and I say, okay, I'm going to loop. I use that perpetual cube. It just stays in place. I've used it. I don't spend it, and I can loop. And then let's say there's another green energy cube there. I can loop again using the perpetual energy cube for the next action. Plus, then I have to spend a green energy cube. And then you're done looping, and you say, okay, now I want to move away. It costs an energy to move away, so I'll spend that. I'll spend, quote unquote, that perpetual energy to move away. Like, it was super cool, and it changed things up. Not a lot, but enough to be really interesting. And we looked at some of the other scenarios too, and I'm eager to play them. Like,
Yeah.
next we have Dukes of Dice night next Wednesday. I'm happy to play it again. Like, I thought it was a pretty solid experience.
Nice. Yeah, I haven't had a chance to delve into that. I think that the Cyan Super Duplicates is that you have to it's a victory condition thing. So it's not that
Yes.
they're harder to get rid of.
Okay. Yeah.
It's harder to win because you have to get rid of them on top of the 4 sabotage tiles.
Right.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to exploring. I am looking forward to exploring those variants for sure in this game. And I'll be honest, I really wanted to try this game solo,
Mhm.
but I got my COVID booster and it whooped my butt.
Yeah.
And I have been laid up for almost practically a week, right? And so my desire to get a solo play in before we recorded did not happen, but I'm really looking forward to trying this solo, actually.
So, as much as I enjoyed this, I don't think this is something I would want to play solo. And I think it just comes down to the whole, what's the saying? Many hands lighten the load. Is that, or am I confusing
Sure,
things?
yeah.
Right? Because there is so much upkeep and fiddliness, and it was really quick. Like towards the end of even our first game, I think we were all pretty good at just doing everything we need to do so we can get into that player's turn. It seems like a lot of upkeep solo. It's not terrible. I'm just being a baby, but it definitely, I think, would affect my decision to try this solo or not. But what I will say, one of the things that I look for in a game is, are there moments when a game can make me feel like I'm super clever? And
Mhm.
this game has that. That has a ton of that.
Yes.
Down to, like you mentioned before, the deck building. You feel really good when it's like, hey, I've built this deck. I've got mostly this particular suit, and I'm gonna have some crazy loops. It's gonna be awesome. Although I will say the non-suited cards are slightly more powerful, which is
Right.
which is
And
pretty
that's
interesting.
balanced. Like that's absolutely intentional.
Yeah, I think that's great. And then also, am I going to build my deck to really harmonize with my character's ability and the other cards in the deck too? I played, so it tells you certain characters are less complicated, more complicated. For my last game, I played with the most complicated one, which had you destroying artifacts from the top of the artifact deck, like the
Mhm.
central deck that seeds new artifacts.
Yep.
And then you have abilities where you can basically use the ability of the artifact that you just destroyed.
Yep.
And really it's in Magic we call it card selection, right? Because you may not be drawing that card, but you have access to it, and it just opens the possibilities. Yeah, you may flip over something that's completely worthless to you at that moment. All right, fine. But the deck is built in such a way that you can get other incremental advantages also. Like maybe when you flip it, each artifact is attuned to a particular era, and it might let you put an energy cube in that era. Okay, you might get
Mhm.
some benefit from it. But yeah, I felt like there were turns where I would just do all of this crazy stuff, and I would loop, and then I would generate a bunch of energy cubes, and then I'd loop some more. And it was just like these super effective turns. You'd also have turns where you'd be like, oh, well, these artifacts don't really do anything for me. And I'm just going to kind of plop around and not do a whole lot. That was few and far between, though, I would say. I didn't think that happened a whole lot. If it happened a lot, that might be frustrating.
Sure. And it's interesting you bring that up because that's definitely something we noticed in our plays as well. Not that we had a deep discussion about, but you heard the chatter of, oh, well, I've got a really weak turn coming up.
Yeah.
Or oh, I'm going to have a great turn, right? Because
Yeah.
somebody's assessing their cards and watching the game and things like that. So we definitely experienced that too. But what I found is on those weak turns, that's where the cooperative strength kicked in, at least for us, because what we would do is be like, what
Yes.
in my weak turn, what can I set up for you
Yeah.
in
yeah.
the next turn? And so it really did feel like teamwork in that moment. So I agree with you. If you had a lot of weak turns, that would stink.
Mhm.
But that's also probably on you and your deck building at that point to some degree. And like I said, lean into how you work as a team and how your weak turn can still contribute to the overall benefit of the team and set people up and have that communication. And I think it works really well that way.
And kind of going along with that teamwork aspect, I think this cooperative game does a very good job of handling the alpha gamer. So as an alpha gamer, I am weak, and I do my very best not to be an alpha gamer. And sometimes it comes through, and sometimes I can't control it. So when we were playing Marvel United, the week before or so, I couldn't resist. I'm just like, look, this is clearly the best thing. You do this, and we'll win in like 3 turns. You can't really do that in the loop because I don't know what you can do, Suze. Like I would have to like sit there and study your 3 cards you have that turn.
Right.
And because it's just constantly changing, there's really not a good way to do that. So for weak alpha gamers such as myself that can't control themselves, this is a good solution for that. So if you have a problematic alpha gamer in your group, this would be a good cooperative game. And just remember, we're people too. We're not the best people, but we're people too.
I mean, you're a lawyer on top of that.
Well,
so
yeah.
the check marks are adding up in a column. I'm just saying.
Oh, okay. That's fair. Well, okay. Let's talk then about theme. So again, there's this evil supervillain time traveling, creating clones of himself. And you're these time agents that are trying to stop him and thwart him. And you're digging up all these artifacts from the past that can help you do that. Did you feel that theme in the gameplay?
So I am not a theme player, right? I am the cold, cube pushing, themeless Euro person in general.
Sure.
I think overall it was atmospheric, and I think the looping mechanism definitely felt thematic for sure, and I felt it when I fired off the looping mechanism. But in terms of like what the eras, I mean, the eras are, to me, the eras are green, purple, orange, and blue. Not they have names. Like, don't get me wrong. It's the game definitely made a good effort to weave that in. And the other place I think where theoretically theme really comes through is in those artifact cards. They're funny, and I don't think that we really have touched on this, but there's a lot of humor in this game. This isn't a heavy, dark, humanity will be destroyed. No, this is funny. Like, I think one of the cards is like underwear of some sort, and there's a Rubik's Cube is called the Enigma Machine, right? And so there's a lot of humor in the game that kind of plays on the context of like your time traveling, so different things come through in different ways, and I liked that. For me, it's not super thematic. I didn't feel like I was a time traveler pulling out my Enigma machine to do whatever quantum wrench or what have you. But I also don't typically play games like this in that manner anyway.
Right.
So I think the loop mechanism felt very thematic for a time travel game, and I love that element, and I felt that connection. Everything else was fun and atmospheric. Thematic, sure. I don't know. How about you, Sean?
Okay, so let me see if I could explain how I thought of the time loop thematically. And I don't know if this is how it was intended. But I love time loops in sci-fi. Like, so like there's the Star Trek The Next Generation episode where there's the time loop and they have to get out of it. And every time the Enterprise blows up. There's the time loop in, there's a Stargate time loop, which is Stargate SG-1 time loop, which is super cool because you just get to see it's Teal'c and O'Neill who are stuck in the time loop, and eventually they just do whatever they want because nothing matters. Kind of like in Groundhog Day too. And then we'll see in our runners up for episode titles, Edge of Tomorrow is another, like, that was a great movie. And I think the cool thing about time loops is you're trying things out and seeing what works and what doesn't. And so a time loop is not saying, I'm going to move this cube here, and then I'm going to time loop, and I'm going to get to move another cube somewhere else. I almost feel like you are running a test to see what works best. And the cumulative effect of all of the loops is that you're doing you're doing it all in the aggregate. If that makes any sense. Like, you figured out which is the best options to take. Does that make sense?
Kind of, but I mean, I'm assuming you're talking about it throughout the game and not just, like, if the game is the movie, then your turn is one of those attempts at refining.
So let me put it this way. All right, let's say that it's a movie and you have the ability to, like, go back 10 seconds, right? And so there are these three guys coming at you, and you decide to throw a punch at the one on the left first. Well, then you realize, that didn't work out because the other one from the right blindsided me. Okay, let me do it again. And then you're like, okay, I'm gonna go after the guy in the middle first. And no, that didn't quite work out. And then the third time you go after the guy on the right first, and for whatever reason, that works out the best. So so
then you're gonna do that again next time.
You're gonna do that again next time, right? And so even though the time loop is letting you reuse an action on a card, I look at it as the cumulative effect of you using all of the actions of that card multiple times is just that you're looping to find the most efficient way to use that artifact.
No, that makes total sense. No, I get that. And I like that. I like that analogy a lot.
Yeah. I don't think that's what they intended, but that's how it worked out in my head. So, and I think that's
it sounds like you saying that you feel like it is thematic then.
Well, again, I feel like that was unintended. Maybe it wasn't. I don't know.
I mean, they created the world and they created the mechanisms and it led you right there. So
maybe
unintentional or not. I mean, does it matter if it's unintentional, but it's still super thematic?
Yeah. But I agree. Like, the rest of it's sort of atmospheric. I mean, like, yeah, you were saying the eras are colors. I mean, yeah, there's like a Renaissance era and there's a modern era and whatnot. That didn't really come through. I mean, you could like stare at each of the wedges and realize what it is. But yeah, I mean, not so much. So, Suze, we had 0 guild thoughts.
Yep.
Which is interesting. And a lot of times, I don't know what that means, I guess. I think this might not be something that's gotten into a lot of hands at this point.
I think it still feels like it's a fairly new game. So I feel like it really only hit shelves within the last couple of months. And I will also remind you that we're in the middle of a global pandemic still, whether you like it or not. And so I'm suspecting that it's just that a lot of people haven't had a chance to play it yet.
Well, let's then give our final thoughts and see if we can direct anyone to go check this out or not. So, Suze, we rate everything here at the Duke's Dice, I'm saying like you don't know, on a 6-point scale Oh, one is a poorly designed game, but playable, not necessarily fun. 6 is an all-time favorite that's a contender for the top 10. And I'm guessing for both of us, this game is going to fall somewhere in between. So, Suze, why don't you start off with your final thoughts and then give us your final rating?
Absolutely. So the Loop for me is one of the cooperative games that I really, really like. I think everything about the deck building works. I really like that I feel like I'm working as a team. I feel that cooperative element more than almost any other cooperative game. Even other cooperative games that I like, I felt the teamwork in the Loop the most. And I think that's awesome. I love the art. I love the component quality. I had a lot of fun evolving and learning and taking risks in terms of using energy and things like that. And I think it's awesome. I haven't played them, but I think it's awesome that they have all these different ways that you can play in the box in terms of ramping up the challenge. I find it challenging enough in the base, which is probably why I didn't push people to try new modules. Also, I played, I will also say this, that I taught the game 3 different times to 3 different groups,
Yeah.
right? So I haven't played, and I would kind of guide my group with my previous experience in terms of like, okay, my second game, I kind of nudged people on, build your deck and also like use the energy and that kind of thing. But I haven't played it repetitively with a single group where we're really taking advantage and really gelling and having kind of a meta experience together. So there's that. That'll happen eventually. But I think that teamwork and the cooperative play still came through, even though I had like 3 first plays of it. So the Loop is a good game to me, and I love playing it. I'm keeping it. And it's going to stay in my collection because I'm really looking forward to exploring it more. It's not a contender for the top 10 for me. I mean, it's going to be rare that a cooperative game would ever crack my top 10, so it's not there. Is it a great game that I will rarely turn down a play of? Or is it a good game worth playing? Yes. Not all the time. Yeah, I mean, not all the time. Belongs in the Duchy? Absolutely, definitely keeping it. So it's somewhere in that 4 or 5 range for me, Sean. Ugh. And the Ducal 6 of no fractions, even though there might be some breaking of that rule once in a while on this show that I've heard many times.
Never by me. I think one time by me.
Oh, no, don't make me pull out the recordings.
There was one time. Wait, these are recorded? Oh my goodness.
What? There's public record? Would I rarely turn down a play of it? I would probably, I don't know. I'm gonna say it's a 4.
Okay.
It's a good game, worth playing, just not all the time. Definitely belongs in my collection. The reason why it doesn't, to stand in for Alex, but it's a high 4, okay. Sean. Because ultimately, the reality is I typically prefer competitive games. And even though the Loop is an excellent cooperative game that I thoroughly enjoy, I mostly will prefer to play competitive games in general. And so I'm thinking about being at a game night. Chances are, I think that this one's just going to be a high 4 for me, Sean.
Okay, fair enough. Yeah, that's kind of the way we get around the decimals, right? All right, so I like this game quite a bit. I'm like you, I'd rather play a competitive game than a cooperative game. A lot of times I like cooperative games, especially when we have a newer gamer or someone, that's just, a newer gamer, because it's a little less cutthroat. You're working together. They don't have to completely understand every nuance of the game in a cooperative game because you're there to help too. But it's not my preferred style of play. Certainly, the fact that what you're able to do, not just what you're trying to do, but really what you're able to do changes every turn, really felt like a big positive for this game. It's also a big negative for this game. I have not played this with Raquel I do not think she would like that. She likes cooperative games. Again, she also would prefer competitive games. But in a cooperative game, she likes to know these are the things that I can do, and I'm going to do them the best that I can. And I think, with her self-admitted analysis paralysis, I don't think she would like this game. And this would be something that I would consider picking up if we could play it here at the house together. Chewy's certainly not there, and I'm not. I've said this before. I'm never going to buy a game again saying, I'll save this for when Chewy's older. It's just not worth it. It's not worth the shelf space. There'll be plenty of stuff that we can play eventually. So that hurts a little bit in terms of sort of a contextual score. But I think it's a really solid game. And I would give this a high recommendation for people to check out. It may not be your cup of tea, it may not be your favorite cooperative game, but I think it's definitely worth taking a look. I am very solidly in a 4. A good game, worth playing just all the time, belongs in the Duchy. I certainly anticipating getting some more plays, especially soon, because I want to play these other modules or scenarios, whatever they're called.
And actually, Sean, you hit on something, the way you phrased it just really popped a button in my brain. And I think where I feel this game, like it touches me, is this is the kind of cooperative game I would recommend to competitive players who don't typically like cooperative games. I mean, there are things like puzzle games like Exit that you play a game, or party games more like Mysterium that you play. Let's put those aside.
Sure.
But for a cooperative game, like a cooperative board game experience, I would really, if I've got friends that I hate cooperative games, but for whatever reason they're looking for one for their collection, or we're trying to do something as a group because we have a new player or something like that, this is actually probably the cooperative game that I would put in front of that kind of person to say, let's try this.
Yeah, I think that may be it. I think so.
So I mean, I think that's the.
And I was again, all of the people in my group that played this and really enjoyed it are also people that are not typically cooperative players.
Yeah.
And so I think it's really solid. Well, alrighty, that's going to do it for the Duke's review of The Loop with a pair of 4s, a 4 from each of us, Suze and Sean.
You are listening to the Dukes of Dice, proud members of the Dice Tower Network. For other great shows in the network, check out dicetowernetwork.com. Back to Alex and Sean for this week's Duke's Double Take.
All right, Suze, well, time to rest those vocal cords a bit because we're now in our Duke's Double Take, where we're going to be talking about Tang Garden. And Suze, you have not played Tang Garden.
Have not.
You have not. So we talked about this back in episode 238, which we called Wu-Tang Stan. It's because we had a double take of Marvel Champions at the time. So there's the Stan Lee and then the Tang from Tang Garden. So I gave this a 3. I said that this is a game that I'm not going to keep, going to get rid of it. I said it's got a great toy factor, especially for a light tile placement game, but too much setup for what you get out of it. Alex gave this a 4. He said that there was the certain thematic connection of building the garden, laying the tiles out, laying the different 3D pieces. There are these pagodas and these bridges and these trees. Amazing table presence. It's a game that he would describe as good with top-notch production. So yeah, this was an interesting game, Suze. It's a tile placement game. I like tile placement games. And then you have all of these other ornamentations. Like I said, you get these bridges and these pagodas, and depending on how you set them up is going to depend on or result in you scoring certain points. And there are these panoramas that get set up, and there was a lot, not a lot going on, but I wasn't crazy about it. So I did ask Alex what he thought of it for the double take, and he said he'd still give it a 4, especially because of the toy factor, but not an enthusiastic 4. He said it looks pretty on the shelf, but he hasn't brought it out to play.
Mm.
So, yeah. Now, what's interesting is we did have some guild thoughts about this.
Sure. So Sylvain says, first of all, I have to admit the game is visually impressive and it has a great table presence. However, after an initial good first impression, the game fell flat for me. Iconography is too small and tough to read, and the game is a bit too fiddly for what it tries to achieve. I ended up selling the game and do not regret that decision. The game was not bad enough to unleash the 2, but it gets a low 3.
Oof. Yeah, and speaking of like the iconography, there was also a color issue. You had these player pieces or these various pieces. There was like a yellow and an orange and a peach and a pink that were all so close to one another. It was ridiculous. It was pretty ridiculous. Steve Paltrineri said, I only played Tang Garden once or twice a long time ago, but to me, it pretty much symbolizes everything that's wrong with the board game industry and Kickstarter in particular. It's a very pretty game, but all the fancy components actually make the game more difficult to play. And the gameplay itself is pretty average anyway. So it made a ton of money on Kickstarter, but clearly most of the development time went into making it look nice, not making sure that it was a good game. And the publishers were rewarded for this in sales, thus encouraging others to do the same. I give it a 2. And by the way, when you unleash the 2, we describe that as game has some merit, but has significant issues. So based on what he said, I certainly understand that. Let me, quick aside. So I did wind up selling my copy of Tang Garden. I spoke on the podcast when we reviewed it. I'd actually backed it on Kickstarter. And it was so weird to me that I backed it on Kickstarter because I was backing very few things on Kickstarter. And this is just not the type of game I would have backed on Kickstarter. And I to this day, I don't know why I backed it on Kickstarter. But I did get rid of it. We had over Labor Day weekend, we had a Gamers Garage sale at Empire Board Game Library. And this was one of the games that I wound up selling. And it was the Kickstarter, it was the expansion, and there were some Kickstarter exclusive stuff. I had it for $100. And that's what I was going to sell it for. If I'm going to sell it, I'm going to sell it for $100. Otherwise, it's going to eBay or Facebook or whatever. And it was towards the end of the sale. And this couple that I had sold some games to earlier, they had come through the line, and there's it's a long line because you have to pay at the register, and then they bring you the receipt, and then you give them the game, and then you settle up at the end of the sale. And so they said, you know what, we've got $100 left. Yeah, we'll buy it from you. And I'm like, okay. I gave them a slip, and they're like, oh, we really don't want to stand in the line. We already stood in the line for 20 minutes. I'm like, oh,
Right.
okay. So they gave me the cash. I take the $100 bill, put it in my pocket. I don't put it in my wallet because I'm not a smart man, Suze. I put it in my pocket with the thought of, I better put that in my wallet soon.
Yeah.
45 minutes go by. The game or the money is gone. The money is gone. I was like, oh, here's what we think happened. There was another couple that was there towards the very end of the sale. And they wound up buying a bunch of games from my buddy Matt. And Matt wasn't there. It was another long story where Matt was not there, but he gave games for me to put out for him. And they were there at Empire, and we forgot, and it was a big mess. We put him out towards the end, and then he actually wound up just selling a bunch of games pretty decently at the end. We're pretty sure that this other couple found the $100 bill, used that to buy a bunch of Matt's games. We're all reasonably certain that's what happened, which I'm fine with. Matt's my 18xx buddy, so
Sure.
he buys 18xx games. He puts in the time to read and learn them and teach them. So I'm fine. I'm fine with how that went. If it went to Matt, that's fine. That's fine. It's just new Warhammer stuff I could have bought with it, but it's fine. It's fine. I'm not bitter.
I mean, put your money in your wallet, bud.
I have no one to blame but myself. Like that was dumb. That was just dumb. So now, Suze, I have to give this an updated score, potentially. I could keep it at a 3. Game is okay, not exciting. We'll play in the right situation. And I'm going to unleash the 2 because I'm not going to play this game again. And I will refuse to play this game again. It is very much, I think, like Steve said, where the components, these beautiful components, do get in the way of the gameplay. There is just, ugh, yeah. No, I'm not going to play this game again. So I will unleash the 2. Alex will keep it at a 4. But I mean, come on, man. He's going to get rid of it. You're not going to play it again. Get rid of it. Drop it to a 3. So.
Yeah, you've got Cascadia.
Is it a replacement for that? I don't remember.
I don't know, but I mean, I haven't played Tang Garden, but I mean, it was very clear that they really like Cascadia together, and it's tile lane and nature themed, and Abby liked it, and variable scoring, and really solid gameplay.
Well, there you go. All right, well, that's going to do it then for the Duke's review, or excuse me, the Duke's double take. I know what I'm doing. Of Tang Garden. Alex keeps it a 4 for some reason. I drop it from a 3 to a 2. All right, Suze. Well, we are in the home stretch of the episode, but before we can end things, we need to talk about the runners-up from our board game guild number 2008. These are the titles that were good, but not quite good enough to snag the top spot. Suze, you want to go first there?
Yeah. So Joshi and Gur went with Your Moment of Zen.
Yeah.
So think obviously Zen playing off of the double take with Tang Garden. What's your moment of Zen?
Well, because you're playing different moments. It's the time travel thing in the loop.
Got it. Okay. Got it.
Yeah, that's from the Jon Stewart Daily Show. He'd always end with the moment of Zen, which is some weird video. So, Jimmy DM90 suggested Boomer Tang, like boomerang.
Boomerang.
Because you're going back and forth and it's coming back like a boomerang, I guess. I forget his exact description. And then the tang in there, of course. So good job, Jimmy.
Yeah. And Kyle Kelly offered up Hedge of Tomorrow, which is very good.
Yeah. Have you seen that movie with Tom Cruise and Emily Blunt?
So I am not a Tom Cruise fan for a variety of reasons. Edge of Tomorrow is my exception film.
Yeah.
For Tom Cruise. I allow myself to absolutely love Edge of Tomorrow in spite of Tom Cruise being in it. Yeah, it's phenomenal. It's so good.
Great movie and great title suggestion with the loops for Edge of Tomorrow and then the hedges for Tang Garden. And then Steve O'Rourke, the name father, suggested Turn, Turn, Turn. I wish Alex were here so he could sing it, which is the song by the Birds. And I think it's like a reference to the Psalms, like they're quoting the Psalms or or something. And he says, while this classic includes references to time, planting, and seasons, I'm seeing this more as a time to every purpose under heaven. But he adds in the parenthetical, under the mandate of heaven, which ties in Tang Garden.
My goodness, this is why Steve is the name father. That is quite the journey.
Yes, indeed.
And final runner-up, Baker Mitchell. Gosh, I kind of like this one. Sean and Suze's Excellent Adventure. Yeah.
It doesn't include Tang Garden, but that's okay because I love Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure. And and Baker said, he's excited to see. I forget what he said exactly. I should have put it in here, but we're putting together this podcast right before our presentation, our history presentation before the high school. So, San Dimas, was it San Dimas High School?
San Dimas High School rules.
Have you seen the third movie, Suze?
I haven't yet. It's sitting in my queue, but yeah, I've got wrapped up in a few other shows first.
Yeah, I haven't watched it either. Well, Gil, thank you so much. As always, we do appreciate your help naming these episodes because except for a handful of times, I'm terrible at it. So, well, Suze, speaking of thanks to you, I appreciate it. Alex appreciates it. And I'm certain our listeners appreciate it.
Thank you. I love you guys. And
we love you. I love you more than Alex, though. Alex, he's what he is.
Look, but Alex produced a baby.
I produced a baby.
I get to see cute photos of. I know, but I mean, your kids are like my kids. They're not babies anymore. And I like babies. So I'm really glad I could join. And thank you so much for having me on. And even though it was after Aaron, I will get over this eventually, and we'll definitely not metagame this into our game of D&D whenever we get it back.
Never.
Get the group back together, which maybe never.
Well, no, I meant never. We won't ever metagame it when it ever happens.
Oh yeah, you would never do that.
No.
Yeah, not. Anyway, but yeah, thanks everybody for letting me be part of the show. Glad to be back.
Suze, do you have any presence on social media by any chance?
I do, but I don't recommend anybody use it. Oh my good God. Yeah, if anybody really wants to see me on social media, I'm on Instagram and on Twitter at 425 Suzanne. Just, you know it, but you don't have to use it.
And then you have episodes of the Dice Tower coming out every other week, correct?
Yeah, every other week, Mandy and I host an episode of the Dice Tower podcast, which you can find on that RSS feed. It's not RSS. Is it RSS?
Yeah, it's RSS.
Okay. And we are going to be reinitiating our show Apptastic, where we play digital board games against each other on the Dice Towers YouTube channel in about a month. And I'm really excited to get that going again as well. So hopefully people will visit us there.
I find a lot of my new video games from stuff you guys do like that. So I'm glad that you're going to do more of that. So, all right. Well, again, thank you so much, Suze. Really appreciate you helping us out here. That's going to do it for episode 263. Thanks again to Blaine Miley for the title, Me, Myself, and Pi. Until next time, this is Sean.
And Suzanne.
And Duke you later, everybody. Thank you so much for listening to the Dukes of Dice. Today's episode was recorded in the Duchy on November 19th, 2021. Our theme music is provided by Carbohydro M from his Prime Legacy album. The Dukes of Dice are a proud member of the Dice Tower Network. For other great board gaming podcasts, check out DicetowerNetwork.com. For all the ways to the Duchy, go to DukesOfDice.com. Find us on Twitter at Dukes of Dice. Join in conversations in our Board Game Geek Guild. Find us on Facebook and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Thanks to our sponsor, Game Toppers LLC. Find their sweet, sweet tabletops at GameToppersLLC.com. We'll see you back here in 2 weeks, maybe with Alex. Until then, game on.